Welcome back to this series of videos about Orlando Furioso. Let's read together Canto 5 today. Canto 5 is a really great one. I believe it's a canto where Ariosto switches into the next gear, whatever, the second gear, and he's giving us a lot of violence, he's giving us a lot of sex, intrigue, and this tone of Canto 5 I think will be the main tone for the majority of the poem going forward. So get ready. Italo Calvino, in his second part of his introduction, talks about the popular type of entertainment and popular type of cantari and songs, and the relationship between them and the intellectuals of the time. So not only in those times, but universally. And so he says, between the intellectuals and the popular artistic productions, there's always been, and never then before in our century, the 20th century, especially if we think about mass culture and cinema, a changing relationship between intellectuals and popular art. First, a developing relationship. First, some kind of refusal or denial from the intellectuals, kind of maybe arrogant refusal, and then some kind of ironic interest slowly, then a discovery of values that you cannot find anywhere else, and then a cultured artist ends up, not only the cultured artist but also the refined poet ends up with appropriating what used to be the naive divertissement, the naive entertainment, the popular one, and he transforms it into something new, into something that is high despite coming from a popular level of art. As always, Ariosto starts the canto with something of an acute little observation about reality, about life, about human beings, and in this case it's the difference between how in the animal world male and female individuals get along, while in the human world it's a disaster. And he says from the beginning in Italian: tutti gli altri animali che sono in terra o che vivono quieti e stanno in pace, o se vengono a rissa e si fan guerra, alla femmina il maschio non la face. The male doesn't bring war or battle to the female in the animal world, except for humans. In fact, he brings in, at the beginning of the second stanza, he mentions megera. What kind of megera troubled the chest, the souls of human beings? And megera was one of the three Furies, if we go back to classic myths and to the Aeneid of Virgil. Barbara Reynolds doesn't translate as megera, but she translates directly as fury, which is good. I'm wondering a little bit if Barbara Reynolds doesn't maybe make her translation a little bit too easy for the reader, because a portion of the fun of reading Ariosto is to go through these very minor challenges or obstacles of the classicisms that he's introducing. Like, for example, this name Megera. She removes the obstacle by just saying fury, and I'm not sure that's a completely right choice for the translation. In any case, the conclusion of this introductory reflection is at the end of stanza 3, where Ariosto says: Quomo sia, quel non crederò in eterno, ma in vista umana un spirito dell'inferno. A spirit from hell. That's what a person who commits violence or against a woman is, and not a man. So it's a great segue to then reconnect to the narration. We know that Rinaldo has found a woman in the woods who was being attacked violently by two men, and he makes these two men flee. They run away because, as Ariosto says, they were not men. And who is this woman who was being threatened, who was in danger in the woods? We'll find out very soon that her name is Dalinda, and commentators say that this character of Dalinda was copied for the most part by Ariosto from a character called Brogan, who was the maid of Isolde in the Tristan and Isolde story. Brogan, the maid, she decides to sacrifice her own honor to save the honor of the queen because of things that were happening. And however, she's not well repaid by her queen because Isolde decides she's afraid of her maid spilling out the truth, and so she gives her up to two servants and tells them to kill her, to have her killed. However, these two servants decide to save her, and in the end they don't kill her, but that kind of subplot reminds us of a little bit of what's happening in Canto 5. However, Canto 5 is really entertaining interlocking of plots and characters that, yes, it's easy to follow because we understand very well what's happening, and in itself it could be the entire plot of a really interesting novel if somebody, a good writer, was to expand it into an actual novel, because it's so thick with intrigue, again, sex and violence, but it really flows very, very quickly, and it reminds me of a comedy that I've read many years ago by Machiavelli, who was a contemporary of Ariosto. I think he wrote this comedy, it was a theater comedy, and he wrote it only a few years after the Orlando Furioso was published, and the name of this comedy is La Mandragola, De Mandragola, which is an extremely funny, clever and very convoluted comedy that really reminds me of the structure of this Canto 5. So as I said, Dalinda is found by Rinaldo and saved by Rinaldo. She's in the woods, and Rinaldo, it's almost as if he makes the mistake of asking her what happened, because she starts speaking to him at stanza 5, and that goes on until stanza 74 in Canto 5. So the vast majority of the canto is Dalinda recounting the story with some classicism. For example, in stanza 5, she says that she brings in all these places where terrible and famous murders had been committed. But in short, what we have here is the daughter of the King of Scotland. Her name is Ginevra, and her maid, who is Dalinda, the woman who is telling us the story. And there are crisscrossings of love affairs, because Ginevra, the queen, she is in love with this Italian knight, Ariodante, who finds himself at a court in Scotland for some training, probably sounds like a training or coaching. She loves Ariodante. Ariodante loves her. And Dalinda, on her side, she also has some type of love affair or love story that's going on with a guy called Polinesso. And Polinesso is not just evil. Polinesso is we could call it a piece of work, because he is somebody who, very shortly after having been the lover of Dalinda, he shares with her that he would actually like to be the lover of Ginevra, the princess. So he says, I'm gonna need your help to help me with Ginevra, but don't worry, that's gonna be just a career thing. You are my real lover. So he keeps lying and betraying everybody that he talks to. So in a very Machiavellian way, I think Machiavellian is the right word to use here, so I'm getting some points to use this word here. In a very Machiavellian way, Polinesso starts to move all these pieces on the chessboard, and he lies to everybody. First he lies to her, to Dalinda. On the other hand, he goes and lies to Ariodante, telling him that everything is already set up. The princess loves Polinesso, and he loves her. And at a certain point, Ariodante wants to have a duel, a fight, but Polinesso says, hey, if I show you, you can see with your eyes that this is true, the proof that it's true, we don't need any duel. And he's such a lying coward, right? So we know how things happen. There is the intervention of Ariodante's brother, Lurcanio, and Lurcanio helps his brother, and in a certain moment when everything seems to be lost, because Ariodato believes the scheme of of this evil man. He leaves, he disappears, nobody knows where he is, and a messenger comes after a week or so saying that Adeodato has committed suicide by jumping in the sea. Urcanio, his brother in particular, he wants, if not justice, at least the law of the land, which is terrible, because he says that any woman who has committed adultery will have to suffer capital punishment. It needs to be applied to Ginevra. And so he says what he saw on that fatal night. At this point, we, the readers, are going like, oh, okay, now I understand, because this explains everything that we found out in the second part of the previous canto, of Canto 4. Everything that the monks told Rinaldo now connects together in this Tetris way, in the click-clack way in Ariosto's plot. So we understand what's going on. And it's really beautiful and even uplifting to see the end of this canto and to see how it gets to a happy end in a certain sense. However, we still have a clever cliffhanger at the end of this canto as well, because there's this mysterious knight who appeared, who wanted to fight for the honor of Ginevra. And we don't know who he is until the end, because Ariosto doesn't tell us. He ends with the very last stanza saying, Quel dopo lunghi preghi dalle chiome si levò l'elmo, took off his helmet, e fe palese e certo quel che nell'altro canto, in the next canto, ho da seguire. Se grata vi sarà l'istoria udire. If you would like, if you please, to listen to the following of my story. It's delightful as always, and it feels to me like this type of narrative engine, could really go on forever without boring anybody and keeping everyone entertained, without even caring too much about the overall plot, as long as things gel together. But you can see how the energy and the strength and the power of the narration, together with obviously the jokes and the punchlines, seem to be almost the priority in telling this story, rather than the characters or some kind of underlying message, which we cannot see really so far, aside from some knightly values and some general reflections that Ariosto shares with us. That's it for Canto 5. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm looking forward to Canto 6, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.